Hello, everybody. Samori Benjamin here. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Saunders. We're here with the Roaring Lion. Andrew, how are you?
Good. I'm good. We were almost done with our script before the ICE shooting in um, Minneapolis happened. Renee Good was shot and killed, and we will be getting into that as well as what has happened in Caracas, Venezuela, in this new episode of Roaring Lion.
Your craziness. And last night, folks, I was at the Knicks game at Madison Square Garden here in New York, and I had not even heard about the shooting in Minnesota, all that drama, and I started hearing reports, and then I wasn't really able to see what happened until after the game when I got home late last night, watched some news reports, and it's just madness, and things are getting out of control. And sports may be the candy store, folks, but one thing about sports is there are rules, and everyone involved are held accountable by the rules for the most part, especially in the high stakes world of professional sports, where the public, i.e., the sports fans and the media, hold everyone accountable. When I look at what is happening with our country and the leadership right now, it just reeks to the highest degree of hypocrisy. And in sports, it would not be allowed. Now, I'm no law expert or international law expert, but from what I understand, President Trump's actions in Venezuela could have broken some laws. Trump, I believe, it seems like, has broken international law by not running his plan through the United Nations Security Council and having it authorized. Because clearly, our country, the United States, were in no imminent danger from Venezuela, which would be the other ground for the United States to be in the right for the military actions that we just took. In professional sports, a team that blatantly broke a law under the league's bylines would be called out by all the watching public, and they would be reprimanded by the league where it hurts, whether by a large fine or the loss of draft picks, they be held accountable. Trump's move to invade Venezuela and not notify Congress first of his actions is a clear violation of the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973, which states, at the very least, the President of the United States must notify Congress of any military act on a foreign country before they make a move, and Trump did not. Blatant disregard like this would not be tolerated on any level of sports, from as far down as youth sports, where rules of age and residential eligibility are scrutinized to the highest degree, to professional sports, where again, league rules and the public's watchful eye keep people accountable.
Yeah, and the media keeps people accountable. The professional news media, not like social media or conspiracy theories, keep people accountable, especially in elected office and law enforcement, right?
Right. Yeah.
We that brings us to Renee Good. Minnesota Public Radio has confirmed the authenticity of a video that a bystander took of the incident on Minneapolis streets. The video shows a number of attempts from Renee Good to leave, and the masked officer, a white man with a black crew cut haircut that is going white, shot several times, and the driver drove it off at high speed after being hit and hitting a power line pole. The shooter then gets into a unmarked vehicle as the witnesses yelled at him. Samori, have you actually watched the video?
Yeah, I did see the video. There's actually two different videos that I've seen.
Yeah, yeah. I've only seen the one that was confirmed as authentic by the local NPR branch,
Yeah.
um, and Trump has got reelected, claiming that this was a that he wanted to only deport the worst of the worst criminals who are within the immigrant communities in the United States. But then he also has done this and uh, and gone after any immigrants or anyone who appears visibly to be Latino, which is a violation of several parts of the Bill of Rights, but also has been exactly what um, they've been doing in the Supreme Court, has even given them the okay to do that, which says quite a lot about where we are. Um, and Trump has always maintained that this has been about um, fighting crime and fighting drug trafficking, and he's done a similar attack in Venezuela. The president has never provided any actual evidence that Nicolas Maduro was running a narco state. And his justification is an odd one, considering that he literally just pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez a couple of weeks ago. Hernandez is an ex-president of Honduras who actually did turn his administration into a narco state, helping to facilitate the smuggling of tons of cocaine to the United States. And that's not hyperbole. He really the amount of cocaine that his administration actually facilitated getting into the United States really can't be measured by the ton. But you know what all of this reminds me of, and it should remind everyone of? 2003 in Iraq. The Iraq War, as we all know, was a disaster, but it was something that the post-George W. Bush Republican Party was still justified for quite a bit. One of the things that made Trump such an unstoppable breakthrough candidate was that he was the only GOP nominee in 2015 and 2016 who criticized the Iraq War and got reelected by breaking the Republican orthodoxy on Iraq being a justified war. A lot of the base that he created in the 2016 election, 2024, and 2020 voted for him specifically because they wanted to keep America out of international affairs in general, and especially in endless wars. That was one of the few bits of overlap between MAGA and the pro-peace parts of the Democratic Party. One former Republican strategist, who is now the publisher of The Bulwark, Sarah Longwell, recently described Trump's actions in Venezuela as being, quote, Bushism with less of a plan. It is the Iraq and Afghanistan thing with less of a plan, end quote. So what happens next is going to be really interesting to us at the Roaring Lion. Will this be something that is internalized by the majority of the MAGA base, or will there be a further fracturing because will there be a further fracturing because of this attack? We don't know yet. Social media is just as focused on this as the news media is. And this podcast will be tracking the changes in public opinion as soon as we get some proper polling on this. What do you think is going to happen this morning? Is the MAGA base is already fracturing over a number of issues, especially the Epstein files. And then we have this other big pillar of MAGAism of isolation, which Trump has been violating a lot since he got in, because it's not just Caracas. He's launched attacks in Iran, in Nigeria, in all over the world. And then he has they attacked a bunch of boats in the Caribbean Sea that he claimed were bringing drugs to the United States, even though Venezuela is not a country that produces drugs. It's a country the drugs pass through on their way to Europe, not the United States. It's been well documented by decades and decades of international law enforcement and journalism. So do you think that this is going to be a real major break, or is it something that's going to be explained away?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's some folks in MAGA who, as you point out, have increasingly begun to see that this guy is not doing the things that he said that he believed in, and he's getting himself involved in all these things that he preached against, right, when he was running. And so it's a very good question. I mean, because a lot of the MAGA folks, sometimes it seems like their rationale for believing in Trump is a little extreme. Sometimes doesn't make much sense because Trump a lot of times doesn't make sense, and the things that he says, clearly at times, just we know how many lies this guy has been proven to make constantly. It's hard to believe anything that he says. So, and you see a lot of the, I mean, just the riot that took place on January 6th, 5 years ago. I mean, so many of them marched down there off of lies, and they all believe that. So, I mean, there's no telling what some of these folks will believe or stop believing. So I think that is a good question. I mean, the fact that people could vote for him to me is astonishing, and they all along have fallen for his BS, blatant BS. Because, like I said, like he's been proven to be a constant liar. So who knows?
Yeah, it was also genuinely amazing to see, not many, but there was a handful of people who participated in the January 6th riot at the Capitol who showed up on the 5th anniversary as a memorial service, it's like they were memorializing 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or something like that.
yeah. And you know, and there are a few of them who have come out and apologized and said they were wrong. There was one woman who was there on January 6th, a few days ago, who was arrested, and she actually, I forgot her name, but she actually, when Trump moved to pardon her, she refused Trump's pardon. Like that's how remorseful she was, and that's how much that she had seen the light, and said, "Hey, now this guy is full of lies," and she apologized to the congressional police and all that, so I mean, the Capitol Police and all that. So yeah, so I mean, a few of them, will realize that hey, like this guy is just leading us down a false trail.
Yeah. Pamela Hemphill is her name. I know who you mean.
Okay.
Yeah. And President Trump is now saying that the United States will, quote, run, unquote, Venezuela. But the regime that Maduro, no one, I want to make clear, no one, especially on this podcast, is defending Nicolas Maduro. Nicolas Maduro is a thug and authoritarian who has rigged elections uh, and has brutalized his son, and millions of Venezuelans have had to flee the country because
Okay.
it's falling apart because of Nicolas Maduro's corruption and incompetent running of the economy. Like no one is disputing that, but at the same
I
time,
mean, like you say that, but I mean, are you actually true that? Are you actually sure that all of that? And like, I know that that's the narrative that we do hear a lot in the media, but I mean, do we know even how accurate all of that is necessarily?
yes, it is accurate. He inherited a regime from Hugo Chavez, who was a revolutionary socialist who was elected legitimately in the 90s and then held on to power illegitimately, um, uh, who ran an economy that was reliant on heavy spending and oil prices, which is the basis of Venezuela's economy for the most part, always staying high. But then oil prices went down through recessions, and then the regime never changed tack and never changed anything, and so they've been spending themselves into oblivion. And also, as the economic situation has worsened, the Maduro has repeatedly rigged presidential and congressional elections multiple times, and
I mean,
it's been well
how do
documented by
we
every
know?
reputable news source in the area.
How do we know? But how do we know like that he actually rigged elections? Like this is something that I've been trying to get to the bottom of. Like, how do we actually know that he did rig elections?
International observers from reputable election and observing organizations have documented this, and the in the last election, the his opponent actually had a very effective poll watching operation. They had copies of the original receipts that proved that Maduro had lost by a substantial margin, but then Maduro declared himself the winner anyway, and held onto power through just
Yeah,
having complete control of the security state and the judicial system. And that has been actually verified by the Nobel Prize committee, who awarded the Machado, the leader of the opposition, the Nobel Prize for trying to hold on to legitimate elections in Venezuela. So that actually
yeah,
there's
but I
has
mean,
been verified from everyone from the New
but
York
she's
Times to
saying
the Wall
it,
Street Journal, the Associated
but
Press, the BBC. Everyone has verified this is accurate.
I mean, from what some things that I've heard, like Machado is not necessarily on the up and up, and she's someone who Trump is kind of like aligned with, and Trump is somebody who, we know we can't trust. I mean, I think the next show we should go into that some because I've heard kind of things to the contrary about that. To be
Yeah, well,
honest,
there's lots of disinformation and misinformation about her out. It's been propagated by the by by Maduro and his cronies, but I'm sure that this is completely accurate and that she is the legitimate winner, and Maduro was not the legitimate winner.
I don't know about that, to be honest with you. So next podcast we'll go into that because I've heard that she is not who everybody believes she is. To be honest with you, like I'm not sure everything that you're saying there is completely accurate. So,
Okay.
but that's
Yeah,
why
well,
we
a lot of
have
people have
podcasts.
issues with her because she is a conservative, but so she doesn't align with everyone's everyone's politics, but just because she's a conservative does not mean that she's necessarily illegitimate. She's not. I'm not saying I'm 100% aligned with her, but it doesn't mean she's
Because
illegitimate.
one thing that I know that Chavez and Maduro have done, like they've tried because they have tried to use the oil to benefit the people, the poor in Venezuela, and not have it be private, and not have the rich, only the rich benefit from it. So I mean, I think there is some humanitarianism that Machado is doing on part of the people of Venezuela. I don't think it's necessarily all one-sided that we hear in the U.S. media all the time. I think like there's another view at it that I don't really think is really being uh, put out there. It's like I see on the media here in New York to talk about how, I mean, the media in America, they talk about how excited so many Venezuelan people are that Machado is gone, but there's also a lot of people there who
But Maduro,
like,
you mean?
huh?
Maduro, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. Maduro. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are also a lot of people in Venezuela, poor who feel like he is trying to better their lives. So I don't think it's all one-sided as, like some people want to make it out to believe. Like
Yeah,
I
well,
really,
it is more complicated because Hugo Chavez and Maduro are both socialists, and they both did have really, really generous social welfare programs that were genuinely aimed at improving the poor. The problem that they had is that they also have there's also been quite a lot of investigative journalism has proven that they have also stolen a lot of money from the state oil company. And there's also been well documented cases of just gross mismanagement and not adapting to economic conditions. Like I said, when the price of oil dropped and the bonanza of oil revenue that they were relying to fund these programs was not adapted at all, which is just the definition of economic mismanagement. That's the problem. The other thing we need to talk about is timing. President Trump's approval ratings have gone to the low 40s and even high 30s. And then there is the economy, which is increasingly wobbly and dependent on data center construction. Inflation is not getting much better, and the Justice Department is now slow walking the release of the Epstein files, despite the bipartisan act of Congress that Trump fought so hard against, and then signed into law when he realized that his party was against him and he couldn't stop it. People are speculating that Trump ran out of ways to distract from all of this, and that he is now trying to do this attack in Venezuela as being one big distraction. We are not in speculation or conspiracy business on this podcast, but it is noteworthy that there is this is where the conversation is going among political podcasters and commentators. And we will be talking more about this as soon as we get actual evidence. And we'll be all revealed in future episodes of The Roaring Line.
yeah, yeah. And it's one thing I just wanted to say because this country, United States, had a long history of overthrowing governments and regime change in this region of the world, and they always say, oh, like this leader is so bad, he's doing X, Y, and Z, but they're always going in there for their interest, these small nations who, are no threat to the United States, and they always have, propaganda that they put out there. But they're always going in there for their best interest. So and uh like 1953, in Iran, the U.S. government overthrew a democratically elected leader, Mohammed Mossadegh,
Mhm.
1954 in Guatemala, the U.S. overthrew Jacoby Arbenez, and even like the whole Cuba thing and with Fidel Castro. I mean, like the United States trying to overthrow Castro and the bigger pigs, it didn't work. I mean, and then the, a large narrative in the United States is how, Castro was like so bad and all that, but Castro was somebody who he won he won an election. From what I understand, he originally won an election, and like and but the what Batista, who was, I believe, Batista, who was in power at that time, like they tried to ignore the fact that he won, and that's what made Castro revolutionary. And Castro wanted to like his whole thing was, listen, like the government in place right now is corrupt, you know what I'm saying? And so let's, like spread the wealth in this country and give, make the poor's life better, you know what I'm saying? But depending who you talk to in this country, or Castro is so evil and bad, but just like really, it's not that simple, you know?
Yeah. Well, Castro was a dictator, but he also was overthrowing another dictator. You're right. In the United States has a
And it's like,
uh,
my thing is like, okay, like he's a dictator, but that's their country, like that's how they run the country. Like, who are we to say how that country should be run? And
yeah.
like, it's not. And
Well,
then, and then
that was the whole
yeah,
problem with Iraq. With Iraq in 2003, yes, Saddam Hussein was a dictator, and he had a horrible human rights record, and he had done horrible things. But there's also so many other dictatorships that where the same logic could be applied to overthrow them, and then we don't
yeah.
do it because it's always like
I mean,
always like a national security or economic
yeah. It's like Trump.
consideration.
It's like Trump really would like to be a dictator. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, he's over here doing all this, and like, oh, this guy's a dictator, yada yada yada. I mean, he's doing similar stuff here. You know what I'm saying? And but he's telling the world in our name, oh, it's Venezuela. Maduro is a dictator, and he's doing all this evil. I mean, Trump is trying to do the same stuff here, and there's so many people in our country who support this guy. I mean, this country, the majority of people voted him to office. So like, it's hypocritical, To me, it's hypocritical.
Yeah, and also it's interesting that there's so many people who have pointed out. I'm not the first person to point this out. There have been many others, but the thing that Trump seems to be doing is that he seems to have a pre-World War II view of the world. Before World War II, we were living in a world where might makes right, and whoever had the most money and had the strongest military could do whatever they wanted. That was that was something that the United States, for all of our flaws, we did try to create a system after World War II with we had international institutions, which for all their flaws were set up to make a world where we're at least trying to make a world where the rights of countries were not based on how powerful their military are or how big their population was, but based on international rules of law. The United States has been by no means perfect or a perfect citizen in this world, but the fact that we were at least trying to do that through institutions like the World Bank and the United Nations is something that Trump is undoing right now. A big part of the reason why America has had more room to maneuver in international relations has been that for all of the things that you've rightly put out, we have at least also been trying to various degrees, depending on the administration, to create a world where there were rules and how big a country was or wasn't didn't affect how sovereign they were. And that is the real danger. That is what Trump is really attacking because he seems to have a instinct of no, we're the big country, we should be able to do what we want. He seems to not have any time to learn about the order that was trying to be built through NATO and the United Nations and the IMF and that sort of thing. So we'll see if it survives.
Yeah, and my last thing is that some of these countries who may have a dictator now, some of them are in a situation that they are now because of the United States
Oh yeah,
intervening,
absolutely.
in the governments and making it, and now it's the way it is now because the United States, you know, removed a regime, that was legitimate because they had their own self-interest. Like, Iran, like I said, had a democratic elected leader, Mohammed Mossadegh in 1953, and they overthrew him. And now Iran is what ran by a dictator. Well, ran by a dictator because the U.S. government overthrew the democratically elected leader because for their interest. So they're like,
Yeah, so much of the problems we have in the world comes from the tunnel vision that the American government, especially the security services, had during the Cold War. They had a theory, they had the domino theory that if one country became communist, then every other country in the world would become communist. So it
mhm.
became easy for the military intelligence services to say, no, we have to do whatever is necessary to keep that from happening. That was obviously very flawed logic and led to so many problems. Iran is probably the biggest example of that, as you've rightly pointed out.